Hello and welcome to Model Kit Stuff. It's First Impressions Day and today we're looking at this 1/48 scale Supermarine Seafire. So we're looking at Airfix's 1/48 scale Supermarine Spitfire, or Seafire I should say, FR.46 stroke FR.47. This is the 2012 release of the 1996 new tool. So this is a pretty old kit now. And I've had it for a while and I bought it second hand. You can see the box has taken a bit of a bashing. It's a skill level 3 and its kit number is A06103 and it's a red box. We can see it comes with two different paint schemes. I quite like this one with the blue on top. It's very similar to another kit I've done recently in 1/48 scale, so I might end up going for that one with the yellow tail and nose because that looks quite nice, doesn't it? But yes, usual box layout. We have a little bit of history. Then it tells us that paint scheme A is from number 800 Naval Air Squadron Fleet Air Arm HMS Triumph, Korean War, July 1950, and that this version is Station Flight Fleet Air Arm Royal Navy Air Station Lossiemouth, Scotland, 1948. So you know that one saw a little bit of action. Then we've got our little paint call outs. Quite a few paints there for both paint schemes A and B, and just one additional one if you're doing paint scheme A. Skill level 3, I think it came with 3 flying hours. But I can't remember. I used them some time ago. Right, that's it. Let's have a look at the instructions. First thing we can see is we've got an older style of instructions to what we typically see when I review Airfix kits. It's still stapled, it's still A4, and the layout is actually very similar, but we've got no colour. It's completely monochrome. But as per usual, we have some history. Tells us to clean our parts and that some of the parts may not be required for this version of the build. And then we have our assembly icons at the bottom there. And then as we flip over, we go straight into part 1, and we can see we've got an older style of drawing, more simpler drawing, but it's still very clear, and fundamentally it does the same thing. Tells us our part number, tells us our paint. So we actually start with the pilot, who's got posable arms, so that's nice. Quite a few colours being called out there, and then we start building up our seat, which looks a little bit basic in the drawing at least. Then we're building up our dials. It's whether we want to paint or whether we want to decal is an option. So it's giving us the decal square there, so we know that's a decal. The control stick going in, and then we're building up our propeller system, which looks like we've got a double propeller. Is that correct? Yeah, we have double propeller. So we've got a mounting bracket, separate propeller fins, another mounting bracket, and then the spinner. So that's quite complex in its own right, isn't it? And we've got all the paint colours there, so you could paint all that and assemble that after painting, so that's nice. Tells us that we're painting the inside of the cockpit black, so matte black there. And then we're starting to put together the fuselage. The propeller spinner is the old style on a single pin. I wonder if that's going to be a bit heavy, and you may get some sag in there, so you may end up having to fix that in place. That's probably a bit heavy for a single pin maybe. We've got some clear parts going in on all three sides there, and we can see that we're gluing in the bulkheads before we put the two halves together, so there's no floor connecting them, which is quite often the case these days. So you have to be careful, make sure everything's straight. That's a more traditional way of doing it. I suppose a more old-fashioned way of doing it now, possibly. Then we've got some, I'm going to guess that they are clear parts. It's calling out clear colours. So we've got some clear parts there to paint up, and a little bit of trimming to be done. Then we have some options around the landing gear and which landing gear bay and which version you're building. Then as we flip over to 14, we are building up our wings. So there's quite a bit going on there. Quite a bit of painting to do before we go much forward. Be interested to see how much detail is visible in there, and a little bit of drilling to do. And again, it's an option, and I'm guessing that is for folded wings by the looks of it. We've got some blanks there, so that could be interesting. Then we've got a manufacturing issue there with the page, but anyway. So then we've got the wings going into the fuselage, tail going in. There's a tail section with a moulded in arrestor hook, so you've got no movement in the arrestor hook. We've got some bulges going onto the top there. Our exhausts going in, and one or two other bits, and the canopy. So step 15, we're building up the vast majority of the aircraft, aren't we? But that's still an option. What is noticeable is we've not got the little silhouette that's now familiar that tells you gear up, gear down, wings folded, wings unfolded. So you're going to have to go through this and mark this up before you start building. Then we're building the wing tips for the folded version. I'm going through the same process but for the folded wheel version. And then step 19 and 20 is building the landing gear. Looks like we've got moulded in hubs and tyres, two halves, a couple of extra details just to add a little bit of finesse, but that's looking like it's probably a little bit basic. We do have posable flaps, so that's nice. And it's giving us some geometry as well. Then in step 22, we're building up drop tanks, air scoops, some rockets, separate filter, air filter and housings, so that's quite nice. Pitot tube and various little bits being added. Looks like we've got different nose options depending on which version you're doing. Then we're adding all of these bits together. It's almost like the 70s, isn't it? And you get a picture of the model and then all the parts around it, and then you just stick them all on. It's very busy. It's actually very busy, so you have to work through that slowly. Make sure you've not missed anything. Machine guns being added onto the wings there, I can see. Single moulded tail wheel. Or we've got this version here, which is folded wings, which is obviously a little bit less cluttered, but you're going to have some of this, I guess, that you can put on the folded wings as well. Yeah, so then we have ordnance going onto the folded wings, drop tanks going on, shoals is there, what it should look like in terms of position. Adding the folded wings, 29 steps, job done. Then we do go to colour for the paint instructions, so that's nice. and I have to say I quite like this one. Korean War, July 1950. We've got the sort of the black and white D-Day stripes on there still, but we've got this blue and grey, dark sea grey, I should say, and they call it beige, but it's like a very pale grey, stony grey colour. But yeah, nice little paint instructions. Again, quite busy because there's quite a lot of decals. All those red numbers are decals there. And it's actually telling us to mix a paint to get this colour, 90 plus 135. And right, it's a satin varnish, so you could actually paint it in the 90 and then add the add your satin varnish over the top afterwards. So they're assuming you won't varnish it, and they're trying to get the paint colour right. But there are quite a lot of decals there. Let's have a look at paint scheme B. Paint scheme B, I like the yellow. It looks nice with the propellers, doesn't it? That looks quite distinctive, even though you've got a less complex paint scheme overall. Again, it's asking you to mix colours with satin varnish there, but you can just do that over the top like we've said. So yeah, very nice. Lots and lots of decals, which means it should look quite good when it's done. Our decal sheet now, it's the usual format where we've got it broken up into common and then the two different systems. There looks to be quite a lot of decal film on some of these, particularly the numbers have got a lot because it's sort of square. It doesn't need to be, but it is. So you might want to do a little bit of extra cutting out there to reduce the amount of decal film that you might have to deal with. And then some very tiny decals all the way through. But yeah, they all look nice. I'm not sure if they're cartograph given the age of the kit. I will check that in a sec. But yeah, you've got everything that you need. Some decals are going to have to go on top of others, but they all look great. The dashboard looks good. Just checking the box, these are cartograph decals, so we shouldn't have any problems with those. Okay, our first sprue out of the box, and the first thing that strikes you is just how far Airfix have come in recent years. Obviously this is a much older kit, and what I can see is it's a fair amount simpler in terms of detail. So we've got no rivets, we've got no holes or anything like that. We've just got the basic structure in there. It's the same with quite a few of these parts. I think they're a little bit simplified. The outer surfaces of the fuselage, less so. We've got lots of fastener detail and all our panel lines. I'm guessing some people will argue the panel lines are quite big, but they don't look too bad to me. And we've got a pilot there. One of his arms has dropped off, and you can just see how much flash there is on there. But the moulding's not too bad. Looks crisp enough to me. The landing gear and struts look okay. The control stick is solid instead of hollow, so that's a little bit disappointing. Let's have a look at our dials. Yeah, you're missing the hands on some of the dials, so it's a little bit simplified as well, as is the detail inside the cockpit there. You can see here they've put in a little plaque saying 1996. They wouldn't do that these days. Yeah, and you can see we've got some soft moulded, part formed bottles and things, and to be quite honest, it's showing its age a little bit, especially against the newer stuff that you've been getting from Airfix recently. But having said that, if it all fits together okay, it's all not bad. It's all doable. You can give it a coat of paint. You can add your rivets if you wish, and you know, there's no major issues. There's no big sink or anything, not in these parts anyway. Let's have a bit of a look at them. Some nice detail on there actually. There's our propellers, which are actually quite nice and thin. I like that method of doing them. These are definitely soft moulded, could be a lot crisper. Our next sprue has the wings primarily. We've got some other bits like the fins for the ends of the rockets and our exhausts, which are solid, and yeah, well, they look alright. They just need a little bit of seam removal and that should be okay. Some of our smaller parts in here as well. And then we've got these strange blocks actually are the grills. You can just about see them, I think. Not sure if that'll come out under camera or not. But yeah, we do have the grills on there. They're quite subtle actually, but what they'll come out like on paint, I don't know. And then we've got our top covers, which have got some detail on, which is nice. And actually, all the lumps and bumps seem to be in the right places. Not that I'm any expert at all. It all feels right, looks good, lots and lots of texture and detail on the surface there. Yeah, that looks okay. Again, if it all fits, it'll be okay. Seem to have another missing part. And the sprue looks like it was cut. I think this was a larger sprue that got cut in the factory to fit it in the box. But yeah, I appear to have one of those missing. I'm hoping it's rattling loose in the box somewhere. I found my part floating around in the box, so I do have all the parts. And this is our last sprue. So 3 sprues, even that doesn't seem very many to a modern Airfix standard. And we've got our wings here. That looks like it's a short shot maybe. It's floating around a little bit, flapping about, but the detail looks nice. You know, this is the folded wing section, so it all looks fairly good. And we've got some basic details for the ends of the wings for folding and stuff. Obviously there's some cables and bits you could put on. And then we've got our drop tank there. I'm not quite sure what those are. Some form of little hooks of some type. More propeller blades. And our spinner. And then we've got our moulded in arrestor hook. And parts for our air scoop and bits and pieces. So yeah, some different parts there. All look really quite nicely done. There's some basic internal structures, but you've got no cabling or anything like that, which you will get these days. So it's definitely showing its age. And finally, our clear parts. And I have to say, they are not particularly clear. That is really quite foggy. We can put that in some gloss varnish, which should help. That's not too bad, and these bits here, but on this side, these are pretty rubbishy, really. Pretty rubbishy. We've got some flash on there. Yeah, these aren't great. Some textured detail on the little wing tips there, but otherwise, yeah, a bit chunky, a bit clunky. We've got some sink in the middle there. It's all reminiscent of times gone by in the model kit world. Right then, Airfix's Supermarine Seafire FR.46 or 47 in 1:48 scale. What are my first impressions? Well, it's what, a 26-year-old tooling that was re-released 10 years ago, and it's absolutely showing its age. In fact, when it was released, it would not have been keeping pace with the standard of other manufacturers, Tamiya and the like, at the time. So, you know, it is what it is. It's not a fantastic kit. It's not bulging with detail. It's got some soft moulding. It's going to need some cleanup. I suspect it's going to need a little bit of help to come together. But the subject matter, really interesting, and so are the paint schemes. Something a bit different, particularly like the idea of having one from the Korean War, which is this one we see here, although I really like the colour scheme with the yellow. So I might change my mind when I come to build it, but right now, once you've got it together and you've got it all cleaned up, you've got a decent set of decals there, you've got everything you need to bring that together. This is about the modeller's skill, and you know it's going to give you a little bit of teething trouble here. You know you're going to need to have a stock of putty in, and you know it is what it is. I think it's an interesting subject, and it should be quite a fun build. It's not overly complex, the part count's not massive. You're going to spend a bit of time on the cleanup, and then away you go. So all in all, I don't think it's too bad. It's not going to blow anyone's socks off, but when it's finished, there's no reason why that can't be a cracking little display piece. Anyway, if you see one of these knocking around on eBay and wonder what you might be getting into, you now know what's in the box. I hope that was helpful or useful, and thank you very much for dropping in. So that's it for now. You enjoy your modelling, and I will see you very soon.